and welcome to the third day of our Erasmus project around introducing best practices for adults with ADHD. We're really excited for the third day. I know some of you have joined day 1 and day 2. We'd like to welcome all the guys from Cyprus and our partners from Greece and Cyprus and the residents from Ireland as well, girls. So we are ready to rock and roll. Today we have Laura Burke, who's going to talk to us around her life experience and how our programme Understanding and Managing Adult ADHD, our programme worked for her and how it's benefited her. And along with all the other activities and events that we do, we also have Christina, who's been pivotal in many of the projects that we're running. She has worked with us on UMAAP. She's also here to talk to us about our ADHD app. So Laura, take it away.
Hi everybody, morning everybody. We've had a little bit of time to wake up now, which is good. I'm Laura, I'm 60, and I was diagnosed at 58 with combined ADHD. And I've been asked to talk to you about my experience with the UMAAP programme. What did I think of UMAAP? Before I started the course, I didn't give UMAAP a moment's thought. I was just so grateful to be given access to professional, accredited support. There's so much information and misinformation out there that with a recent diagnosis and navigating a chemically changed persona, I was utterly baffled. But with the benefit of UMAAP hindsight, I've been able to identify that I was definitely in a flight or fight stage of overwhelm, trying to sort the ADHD wheat from the chaff on Dr. Google. As well as working hard to keep my masks in place and pretend to the world that I wasn't really neurodivergent, despite a very clear diagnosis to the contrary. On completion of UMAAP, I realised the programme was, in fact, exactly what I didn't know I had been hoping for, and much, much more besides. It's the place I can sit and breathe and not pretend to be anything. You know, the dependable friend, the efficient colleague, the person who'll go above and beyond for everyone else, but never for themselves. Within the safety of UMAAP, I finally got to sit and just be me and learn that being me isn't a bad thing, that I don't have to accept others telling me how to live in this neurotypically biased world. I learned how to relearn and develop into being me, to be the authentic Laura. And in this space, I know it's the right space to confess that when I wrote that line, I did get emotional. Did I learn any tips on UMAAP? Loads of acronyms, concepts and tools that made so much sense, like the dropping anchor or the freeze tool. By far and away the most useful and by extension the most successful thing I did in UMAAP was participate. I shared deeply private moments, fears, failures and stories, and they were kept in a safe space without judgment or fear of being shared outside of UMAAP. That was liberating and educational because the tools and supports were almost personalised and exactly relevant to me in that UMAAP universe. In masking my ADHD, I was so conditioned to never ask for help, to always dissect things from my viewpoint, that I never imagined there could be another way to live. There were plenty of those aha moments. Being wrong or misunderstanding things turned out to be a good thing. And I found myself committing to the positivity I felt from accepting that. UMAAP is the opportunity to build self-confidence and access successful outcomes. There's relief in finding my tribe and connecting with others who understand me and celebrate me. I kept an open mind. There were 6 long months between learning the acronyms, concepts and tools, and afterwards, I'll be honest, I didn't remember a single one of them. I was so relieved to be notified that UMAAP received funding and started support sessions in March 2023. Only a few minutes into the first session, it all started to come back to me. I let go of the tension and anxiety that had built up in those intervening months, and that's why it's of enormous importance that I stay engaged with UMAAP for the rest of my life. The repetition cements everything I've learned, and I will need the UMAAP tools to reach out and help family and my friends who may not yet have a diagnosis or access to knowledge, help and support. I've successfully used those tools in my family to stop the toxic internal, I'm stupid, why does this always happen to me, judgmental voice that we neurodivergents have in the face of chaos or when we need to pivot our plans. This negative, undermining voice is so familiar to me and perhaps to others here today. I was and still am truly proud of me for remembering how UMAAP taught me to navigate this toxicity and to witness my family members' relief that we're able to share successful, supportive experiences and not ones that descend into fear, anger, raised voices, panic, and chaos. These are truly uplifting moments of shared success that I'll cherish. UMAAP really does make a difference. So what were my takeaways from UMAAP? Well, genuine shock to learn that my internal voice was the biggest villain in my life, and I was glad to identify it and train it into positivity. Prioritizing healthy food, better managed socialization within my acceptable limits, useful rest at night, not in daylight hours, taking time to be present and to recognize and acknowledge enjoyment in my life were all such a revelation. And the last one that I'm still working on for me is more exercise, which I'm doing under a qualified medical professional gaze. It was important that I identify values for myself and put the time and energy that I normally reserve for others into me. Yes, I could show you how to do insert life skill that I previously undervalued in myself, but which others want free access to. But instead, I'm going to sit in a chair, put the phone away, read a book. Because don't get me wrong, being needed makes me feel amazing. But if I don't manage that ego, then I become a total doormat, and that's bad for my mental health. So I set clear boundaries to avoid being pushed into overwhelm by overcommitment. My default is a safe decompression space, isolation, hiding under the duvet, and doom scrolling until my brain shuts down and my eyes close. So I learned to intentionally go to sleep, give my brain the chance to rest, download, process, and then reboot from daily challenges. I learned to regulate my emotions, to be more accepting, empathetic, and understanding of myself, as well as those in my family or friend group who may have undiagnosed ADHD. And I use the UMAAP tools to overcome my fears, which is why I'm talking to you today and not hiding underneath that duvet, doom scrolling social media. Because I recognize that despite crushing imposter syndrome, I have to acknowledge that I do have a valuable skill and that I'm a woman who just happens to have ADHD, but also has a voice that can speak up clearly and advocate for others. I chose to be frank and honest. I'm just planting the seed of coffee right there. But being frank and honest was essential to me getting the most out of UMAAP instead of faking it to appear to be the always available in a crisis colleague, the creative, fun parent, dutiful child, or loving sibling. I can't flip the switch and turn off my ADHD. I already know that UMAAP support, navigating my neurodiversity becomes easier with each support session, every time. I've accepted my ADHD. I'm committed to having an easier journey through life, and I want to demonstrate that therapy works for my children as well as others who may be struggling. That's why it's critical I keep attending the UMAAP support sessions, because with ADHD, it's literally built into our neurological hard drive to forget or archive everything. And I never want my grasp to slip on all of the hard work that I've done. I learned that acceptance and commitment aren't just buzzwords. I got the most out of UMAAP because at my age, and I live hanging off the edge of the wild Atlantic way, I recognized it was my only chance. I have no psychiatrist, I have no access to the ADHD hub, but I do have UMAAP, and I can UMAAP anywhere. If you take UMAAP away, I have nothing. When I started my UMAAP journey, I would have liked to have been able to see into the future to where I am now and how much I've learned from UMAAP, and how I became so passionate about the positive, transformative effect UMAAP has had on my life and the lives of those around me. For reasons I will never truly know, I gave myself permission right at the start of the course to let go of my anxieties, my fears, my desire for perfection, or to be seen as more than, and instead gave myself permission to just breathe, to exist in a happier, kinder space, to just let the transformation of me happen as it was always meant to. I was born with ADHD. I live with ADHD. And when I die, I will die with ADHD. Look, I'm still the same person, but with a UMAAP core, and I no longer feel lost trying to navigate the neurotypical world without a UMAAP. Without a map, sorry. I have the UMAAP map. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for your neurodivergent time this morning, which as one of you, I truly appreciate.
Thanks a million, Laura. And that's just one of the many, many lives that have been changed by some of the programs that are out there to support people with ADHD, try and make lives better, and that's what we're here for. And just in another nutshell, to add on, here's Christina, who's going to talk about some other program that is going to change the lives of many, many people for a long.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation. My name is Christina Seery, and I'm a PhD candidate in the UCD School of Psychology. I know yesterday you guys were at the UCD Club, so you might have met my supervisor, Professor Jessica Bramham. So I've had the pleasure for the last 4 years to work with ADHD Ireland and the Health Service Executives National Clinical Programme for ADHD in adults. And really the way it came about was that towards the end of my bachelor's degree, I got in touch with Jessica about any work that she had going on. And it was totally serendipitous that I'd done previous work with Bodywise, so that's our national eating disorder charity. And Jessica, working with ADHD Ireland and the HSE, wanted to put together a similar program to what the Eating Disorder Charity is doing, but for ADHD. I'm a neurotypical woman myself, but all the people I love in my life have ADHD or are autistic, and so this is something that really means a lot to me. So I really wanted to contribute, and I think as soon as I started thinking about coming on to this PhD, I realised very quickly the total lack of supports for ADHD in Ireland generally, but obviously across Europe. And I remember reading the ADHD Europe 2020 survey, and that Ireland has the longest waiting list for supports, highest reliance on private healthcare. So very quickly I became really excited about an opportunity to do research, which I love, but also to do research that would make an impact and I'll actually help the people I love. I've had so many friends who thought they were neurotypical, and then just through connecting in with my research or helping me out by looking at the literature. I had a couple of people, I had one friend who helped me with an early iteration of UMAAP, realized that she too had ADHD and going for assessments. So it's been amazing to help people like Laura, and then it's been really incredible to help my friends in their own ADHD journeys. So anyway, so I had two major projects for my PhD. So that included the Adult ADHD app, which I'm about to talk to you about, and UMAAP, of course. So the ultimate aim of my research was to develop and evaluate open access supports. So given that there's such barriers to services in Ireland, such long waiting lists, and the realistic, even though the National Clinical Programme is rolling out clinics, like Laura was saying, it's geographically based. So there's a lot of people around the country who won't have access. They're relying on adult mental health teams that are totally overrun and often will not accept ADHD referrals. So the idea being that we wanted to create something that ADHD Ireland could provide so that people could access them quickly. So we wanted something that was online with a short waiting list or instantly downloadable. And that didn't require any gateways or barriers such as a formal diagnosis, so that we could give something to someone or have general practitioners recommend when someone comes in saying, I think I have ADHD, that they can access very quickly without needing a diagnosis. So we're not relying on referrals from clinicians and stuff like that, and kind of creating more workload for clinicians, but also that kind of mental impact and overload on ADHDers of having to go through more steps and more forms and ask more people for support. So kind of trying to streamline it as much as possible. So just to say, I'm funded by the Irish Research Council, Government of Ireland Scholarship, and I have a couple of my studies are published already, and another one has been accepted for publication. So you can look up my name, and it's also on the ADHD Ireland website if you're interested in reading the research side of things. Great. So why did we want to create an educational app for adults who have ADHD? So the aim of the adult ADHD app is that people can download it, read about ADHD, learn about it, come to grasp with it, and really, we kind of always thought of it as a beginner's tool, so something that can start them off on their journeys. Like Laura was saying, there's a huge amount of internet or information on the internet, and it's really overwhelming. So we wanted to kind of be one place that, yes, it covers a broad spectrum of topics, but that you could go to and get a grounding in, dip in and out of as you please. So we know that ADHDers have a period of information seeking after a diagnosis. So they go in for an assessment, they get told they have ADHD, and we know that there's this period when there's a lot of excitement and elation, seeking out information, trying to learn as much as possible. I'm seeing some nods. And then often that comes with, after that, a state of grief, of grieving potential and what could have been noticed sooner. So we wanted to, as I said, provide information that can be accessed quickly, but also information that's reliable, isn't coming at it from the perspective of like a negative view or stigmatizing view, so that through that grief process, people are learning, I guess, something comforting about themselves, or at least the right information while they're processing their diagnosis. So we know that teaching about ADHD, so psychoeducation, which is like learning how to manage neurodivergence or condition, has been shown to improve knowledge of ADHD, self-efficacy, so people's self-belief in themselves to enact a task, self-esteem. Sorry, I just thought really keep going there. I've met Magda before at one of the UMAAP events. Sorry, thanks Magda. Self-esteem, so people's view of themselves, well-being, and ADHD traits or symptoms. So that in that instance, the ADHD symptoms refer to kind of like challenging experiences of ADHD traits. The benefits of an app is that it can increase access, be wider reaching, as well as being available to immediately get it. So people can get something in the moment without a wait. We also know that most adults, if not all of them, will find it very difficult to access information about service provision, which acts as a barrier to care. So any kind of public health service like the one in Ireland is really difficult to navigate. People don't even know where ADHD clinics are. So we want to be able to we have a right as a public health system to make that information as clear and transparent as possible. People should know what they're getting into if they get a referral to somewhere, or how they go about that pathway. So before we jumped into developing this app, we had a look at the evidence for apps that were already available. So there was this systematic review, so like kind of very thorough review of the evidence published in 2020 that found that there were 110 smartphone apps for ADHD available to download. Only 17 stated that they had any kind of scientific evidence for the information they were providing, and none had been formally evaluated. So there was no kind of linked in with a scientific community or something to see what the benefit of it is. So I'll also add to that is that there's very limited ones that are kind of informational. Like the majority of apps that are available are very much about do you have these ADHD symptoms? Yes, you do. You should think about an assessment. And that just really leaves people kind of wondering. And the reality is people will have Googled that already. They're not going in, nobody's downloading an ADHD app unless you're trying to learn for a partner or a child. They're going into it self-identifying or with a really strong theory that they already have ADHD. So it's really important to be providing reliable information. And I'll speak more about that in a few minutes. So to give you a sense of the work that went into the adult ADHD app, back in September when I started my PhD, the first goal was that we really wanted to involve ADHDers in the development of this app. So we wanted to know what exactly is important to cover if we're trying to make this comprehensive as an app as possible. What do we need to include? And most importantly, what do ADHDers think we need to include? So we started off by identifying priorities for psychoeducation in digital mental health interventions, so online interventions like the smartphone app and UMAAP. So that was September 2020 to January 21. And we did that by doing called a modified Delphi method survey. So we basically I analysed a load of ADHD organisations' websites to get a sense of what kind of information they provide for people, and then made a list, presented it to ADHDers, and they ranked them on what was essential, as well as providing additional suggestions. So then we moved on to starting to develop the content, so writing each of the pages, having that reviewed by psychologists, psychiatrists, the occupational therapists, the clinical team, and then like Nicola, Ken, and an HSC member. We were all like meeting regularly, and we would literally go through page by page what needs to be added, what needs to be reworded. And then at the end of summer 2022, we did a test drive. So we asked ADHD Ireland members if they wanted to kind of run through the app and give us feedback. So based off of that, we made adaptations. So like one of the big things were that kind of people wanted something more engaging, because it is a very static app. I'll say that, like the text is there to read. So we added infographics to make it more like consumable. We also added mindfulness breaks. So like you can see here that we created specific mindfulness practices that are all under 3 minutes, with the aim of it being as accessible to an ADHD brain as possible. So they're available. So there's things like a mindful break if you're struggling to focus, so you can kind of reorientate your attention. A mindful break if you're experiencing difficult emotions. A 3-minute breathing exercise. So just something that people can tap into. And it's my voice recorded in those, and I did qualitative interviews, which I'll talk about again. So I was like, I hate that voice in the mindfulness. It's so squeaky, and I'm like, I did have someone else do the interviews, because I was like, this is like, so do you know when you like work so hard on something that it almost be like, it's not that I was like overly protective. I was like, this is wrong with it, this is wrong with it, this is wrong with it. So I was expecting that. So I needed to have other people do the interviews. So I was so glad when I saw that pop up, and I was like, oh, okay. Anyways, so we then, once we adopted it, we did a launch of the app with our Minister for Mental Health and Older Persons, Mary Butler TD. So that was November 22, and we did a media campaign to raise awareness. And so then that was the work of developing it. And then a year after that, until October 23, my job was then to look at getting a sense of people's experiences, what the uptake of the app. So that's the kind of evaluation piece, like how we've done all this work, but how suitable is it for adults with ADHD? It's not just that we wanted to launch it and leave it, we wanted to continue adapting it and making it better and better. So for that, I audited the app analytics. So how many people downloaded it, how much people are using it, how much people return to the app. And then, like I said, I did qualitative interviews. So we interviewed 14 app users to get a sense of how they found the app. Did they learn anything? What could be changed? And also to get an idea of like what the context of their app use was. So like what was motivating people to use it, what kind of took away from people using it. So I'll talk more about those findings now. So I've just summarized that already, but yeah, so we audited the first year of app use. So this has obviously changed a little bit since October 23, recruited app users. So we had a little ad that popped up in the app, and then ADHD Ireland put out a call for people to participate in interviews. And we really wanted to welcome people, part of the idea of someone else doing the interviews. So we very specifically put in advertisements that 2 research assistants who had nothing to do with the app would do the interviews, so that people could feel very comfortable in being open and honest about their experiences. So we had 14 participants with ADHD, and the interviews very much varied. Like there was one interview where it was only kind of a brief 12 minutes, and then up to an hour. And then we used thematic analysis. So that's a way of looking at the data to kind of build a sense of what our common experience throughout the interviews. So in terms of the app analytics data, so in the first year we had 18,000 downloads, and of those 18,000 downloads, 12,000 people like opened the app basically after that. So good 6,000 people that were like, oh, great. Totally forgot about that in the cluster of all the apps. And then of the 12,000 people who used it, slightly over half, so 52%, came back to the app multiple times. And that kind of sounds, maybe that doesn't sound great, but that's very typical of mental health apps. So like there's a study of a big app for depression called Mood Tools, that has like 150,000 users, and like that 50% don't use it after the first time. And so that kind of 9 minutes, 3 sessions is about what we see generally in mental health apps. So there's a broader question on how we keep people in it. I suppose for something like a psychoeducation app, it's not as important to keep people returning because they've likely searched for something specific, learned, and then maybe jumped off to UMAAP then or something like that. Or they wanted to know about the ADHD clinics. So they came for that, learned that, and then are looking for a referral. So it's more what we like to see is that people are engaging with it at all. It's really just a big win after all the time and energy that went into it. But we also, obviously, the qualitative feedback is really important to see what we can do to either have people return or make it an easier experience in that first time that they use it. So I'm going to share the next couple of slides. I'm going to talk a little bit about like our learnings from doing this adult ADHD app. So really the biggest takeaway was the importance of providing a credible resource. So in the app, you can literally find like references for all the content that we have. So we wanted to make content or provide education that is very much based off of scientific evidence, so people can literally find those references. And if they want to, we know that like an ADHD brain is really curious, loves a jumping off point. I had people tell me that they use those references to start looking at the scientific information and engaging with that. So what we heard is that people really considered the adult ADHD app as a one-stop shop for information that they could trust. So generally, there's an increasing interest in adult ADHD online, and there's more and more people are rightfully recognizing that their experiences are likely adult ADHD, so seeking out support and Googling it generally. But we also know that there was a study done in 2022 reviewing the top TikToks on ADHD, and at least 52% are misleading. 30% are people's lived experience, which is obviously really important, but only 20% is accurate information. So we really need to be combating that and providing something that's correct in the face of that level of misinformation. So in contrast, the app was a starting point in the ADHD journey to help ground participants. So one of the big kind of learnings that we took away from this is there was a difference between people who were very new to their ADHD and people who were very familiar with their ADHD and might have been diagnosed a couple of years ago. So they talked about wanting the app for moments of crisis. So like, I'm struggling to focus at work, I need something to help me now. So in that case, the app didn't support that because it's kind of more general introductions. But for people who were new to their ADHD, it was a real opportunity to get an idea of the ADHD landscape and what might be coming up for them, and helpful in terms of coming to terms with like, oh, actually, like emotion regulation is going to be a big part of this. That, like my difficulties with time blindness, or time optimism, I should say. That's, I know, but it's so good, isn't it? That's possibly my ADHD. So really grounding for people there, and had one interviewer that was really lovely, interviewee, who talked about how his friend at work had been talking about the ADHD app, and he was like, oh god, I gotta check it out. And that's how he found ADHD Ireland and got involved in support groups. So if people aren't involved in ADHD Ireland, the app is also a stepping stone into that ADHD community. So the psychoeducation while waiting for services or ADHD clinics is really empowering for ADHDers. So we're giving them a chance to learn about the best practice or what they could expect from services in Ireland. So we're equipping them with the power to advocate for themselves, to say, actually, I deserve to get this, like my GP needs to fight for this. So the app is a resource that can help bridge that information provision gap that I talked about. So I'll just read out these two quotes related to these ideas. There seems to be an awful lot of unhelpful, I suppose, information out there and information of dubious quality. So the app at its simplest, there's an element of kind of trustworthiness and a kind of one-stop shop. You know, if you didn't have the app, your journey into discovery about ADHD would be very kind of chaotic. It's like, you know, you're opening the door into ADHD, you're walking into the lobby. So that's really that idea that the app is a bit of a stepping stone to that kind of first, almost beginner's manual to ADHD, and then they can go on from there and expand their ADHD horizons. So what was really important, and the whole aim of the qualitative research, was to figure out how we can improve the app and continue making it more ADHD friendly. So like you can get a sense here, this first quote, I would have had to have been in the space of having high levels of dopamine, being in a really good mood, had a lot of energy and time. So the big piece of feedback that we were getting was that people kind of got overwhelmed by the navigation system. So it's kind of like lots of different levels in it. So you kind of kept clicking, and then someone described it being like Twitter, like you just keep falling down a rabbit hole and you don't really know how you got there. So that was really important for us to know how we can simplify that. So as participants recommended more ADHD friendly adaptations, like simplifying the navigation or incorporating a rewards-based system, so you can kind of give some dopamine with the app. Participants who were more familiar with their ADHD wanted an app for moments of difficulty, not psychoeducation, so like I'm talking about. So these participants talked quite a bit about how the mindfulness breaks was supportive, or that they had like a couple of people who were already linked in with the ADHD clinics in Ireland said like psychiatrists and psychologists recommended them using it for specifically for the mindfulness breaks, so that they can use it in times when the ADHD is giving them some kind of challenge. So the big learning here is that if we're creating person-centered or ADHD-friendly digital media, this is a process that continues beyond launches. What the literature will show and says is that historically all these interventions that researchers and clinicians have developed for ADHD have obviously been very neurotypically led and dictated by a researcher who thinks they know best, and that the ultimate aim of digital or any kind of intervention for ADHD is to like dampen down any kind of symptoms. Our view in UCD School of Psychology, and certainly in line with ADHD Ireland, is that it's much more about being neurodivergent friendly, promoting acceptance and self-compassion and understanding of ADHD to thrive with it. So part of that is recognizing that our interventions will be enhanced by making sure it's the neurodivergent voice is centralized there. So, and that'll, like with UMAAP, we did, that was really part of the research as well, that we were like, okay, this is like very much collaboration and we're hearing this feedback, so we got to make it better and better and better so that it's more and more ADHD friendly. So that was our big takeaway, is that just because we've launched it and we did this big launch with the Minister for Mental Health doesn't mean the work is done. It has to keep going. And then what was interesting, and I didn't expect to come up in the research, was the big emphasis on how people's, and I should have expected it, people's experiences of our health services really dictated how they viewed the app. So the context of their experiences reflected their attitudes. So participants' experiences of the health system influenced their attitudes towards the app. So I'll give you this quote here to really emphasize this. The way the system is here and the wait lists here are so long and so on, it just frustrates me because of the system, not because of the app. So some of this, I find actually more triggering because of the system here. So what this participant was speaking to was actually like the information about the ADHD clinics. She lived in a geographical area where she wasn't going to access them, and she wasn't getting offered, like had originally got her diagnosis privately, but now needed a psychiatrist, so had to get reassessed. Wasn't getting off the opportunity to engage in like psychological interventions. So seeing the content about the HSE and this kind of best practice, while it equipped some people with the opportunity to advocate for themselves, it also meant that other people were like, well, for God's sake, I'm never going to get this. It's ridiculous that you're kind of advertising this. Or like someone talked about how this kind of HSE logo everywhere just gave them the ick, like it was gross, like it really triggered like a visceral response. And then in comparison, ADHD Ireland's buy-in made it like more of a positive experience, or made people want to engage with it. They were like, well, I trust ADHD Ireland, so I can trust this app. So really that highlighted the importance of this kind of like ongoing collaboration that ADHD Ireland, the HSC and UCD have, and that UCD, tutoring my foreign, we add like this research rigorous side to it while balancing maybe people's triggering difficult experiences with public health services that the HSC really want to improve on. And then ADHD Ireland just gives it, because people so often have such positive sense of belonging and community and like feel really connected to ADHD Ireland, it just all really works out in terms of developing something like this. So that was like obviously really valuable and important. And when I share this slide at kind of digital mental health conferences, that's what I emphasize in terms of co-design, is actually this collaboration really enhances and balances people's negative experiences. So ADHD Ireland's users are using it. I've had really good experiences with their community, so I'll engage with it as well. So in summary, the Adult ADHD app offers an opportunity to provide evidence-based information on neurodivergent conditions during a period of prevalent misinformation. We need to continue to improve the suitability of the ADHD app even after it's launched, and collaborating with ADHD app or ADHD Ireland really added to its credibility. So just to speak to the limitations of kind of my research, we're limited by what app analytical data is available. So when you log on to like Google Analytics, like it was like we didn't get specific numbers or anything like that, and it's like very like the data is live, so it's like changing while I was analyzing it. Like one person would use the app and then it would go slightly up or whatever. We recruited through the app and then ADHD Ireland. So maybe if we'd gotten like people through the HSC, we might have gotten like kind of maybe more balanced views. We don't know the degree to which participants read the app or how much they connected to it. But then for the future, or kind of like findings, is that the app is feasible. So it can work in real life. People generally are quite happy with it. It meets that aim of providing education. We'll continue to evaluate the app even after we modify it. And we need to understand, given that this kind of piece around people's experiences of the HSC were triggering their reaction, like we just need more understanding of people's experiences of services so that we can improve them and make sure that they're neurodivergent, like friendly. much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, and connect with us again.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the partners.